Welcome, everyone, to week one of the men's empowerment. Actually, happy with this turnout today. We were down pretty low at first, but this I think is going to be a really nice group. So let's jump right into it. We only have an hour and a half. We're going to cover a lot. And so let's talk about what is the structure of the me going to be. First of all, what is the purpose? So the purpose is to educate, but not only just to teach you stuff, empower and inspire change. And that's really the main thing, and that's also going to separate this from a lot of the lunch and learns, is that we're really going to focus on ways to implement and what sort of things that you all need as individuals to make yourselves healthier in the way that you want. And it's really about the change. That's really what it's all about. Now, my intention for the program, we're going to get into what your intentions are as well, as far as what goals you want to reach. But my intention is to have each and one of you try at least one thing new, a new lifestyle habit that can help you build more health. And because we're going to get into, the lifestyle is so important. It really either gets us healthy or it gets us sick. So if there's only one thing that we add to that, that makes a big difference in the long run. So that's my intention, but really it's for you to get whatever that you need to get out of it to feel better. Now, the main thing is that this is your personal journey. And so, again, whatever you need to get out of it, that's what I want you to get out of it. And that's why we have certain activities that we're going to get to in a moment. But those are your ways to tap into your relationship with this. Because I don't want it to be just me lecturing and telling you about stuff that I think you should do. I want it to be about what you own up and what you want to do and what you feel like you need. And so that's a really important part, is that this is your journey. And so I see that you're going to want a pen because there are going to be some fill-in activities as we go along. All right, so here's the structure. This is going to be the same basically every week. So there will be lecture components. I'm going to educate you on a specific disease process because that's really what we seem to know. But then along with that disease process, what is going wrong in the body? And then what can we do to fix it and correct it? And these are going to be basically lifestyle type stuff. It could be diet, it could be exercise, it could be stress reduction. But the main goal is to empower you with things that you can do. Because at the Lunch and Learns, and then we'll get into some of the treatments here, but really that only disempowers you. That's stuff that your physician or other health practitioner will have to do for you. Where I'd rather give you tools that you can do it yourself. And so the disease education is only there to help you understand processes that could happen in the body that are unhealthy, and then understand why certain lifestyle habits are so good and so healthy to hopefully inspire you to add those to your life, or if you already have them in your life, to make them maybe even a bigger part of your life. We're going to have discussions, which are, first of all, everything here is completely optional, even attendance. And so if you don't want to, you don't have to talk about any of your health issues, first of all. That's a privacy thing. But even the discussions, I encourage people to take part in whatever way they can. But you're under no means are you required to. This isn't a graded class or anything like that. But the discussions do tend to help awaken us to what our points of view are, and also help others sometimes see that we're not alone in what we're thinking. And so the discussions can be really good in a group setting. Activities. And so one of these are going to be, if you look at your handouts, which is probably in the back, this is the first page that you'll see. It says week one self-assessment. It's got the empowerment logo. You'll probably want to take those back handouts out and keep them handy because we'll be filling in, especially this one, as we go along. And so these activities, again, are going to help you see your relationship with this particular health topic and where you stand, and make it really more real to you. And it's also going to be an opportunity. We're going to have other activities that can give you an opportunity to really put into practice what we're talking about. That way it's not just thoughts and just knowledge, it's actually something that we do too. And then handouts, you also have handouts which will basically give you information. There aren't any actually for this week, But for each week hereafter, there are handouts that will really reinforce what we talked about. That way you have information with you, and you don't have to remember and memorize everything we talked about here. Now, the way this program is set up is that it is a complete package where that each one, we will talk about isolated diseases and isolated diet and lifestyle activities, but they do build on one another. And so would be ideal if you can make every single one. Obviously, life happens, job happens, and so we have set it up where that if you do have to miss one, it's going to be recorded, and you can watch it at home, and you'll still have the materials, so that will work. But it seems to be best when people are in the class, being active in the process, because each week we will talk about things that we had covered in previous weeks. And the goal is you'll see that it really is all related. And so even if, let's say you want to lose weight, even though I'm not sure if anyone here wants to do that, but if you do want to lose weight, that it's not just diet, it's not just exercise. We're going to talk about things like stress reduction, which actually does play a big role in that. And so this is how we're going to keep tying it back week after week. By the way, if you have any questions at any point, just let me know. I've set it up where that I have some extra time, figuring that there will be some discussions that will come across. But other than that, I'm just going to keep going through. Okay, we've talked about this at some of the Lunch and Learns. If you read any holistic health blogs or videos or documentaries, or just in general, you probably know there is a paradigm shift in medicine. Really, the new age of medicine started back in 1928 when penicillin was first discovered and used as an antibiotic. And what this showed, at that time, infections were a major cause of death. People get infections and then they die. And with antibiotics, it was a quick and easy way for us to kill those infections and keep people alive. And so, of course, in this time, it was very exciting. People are living much longer. They're not dying from these acute illnesses anymore. And so with that came this paradigm, this worldview, that with medicine you can do a pill, a magic pill to cure things, and that you can cure diseases by giving a dose of whatever drugs, and that people would be able to live for longer and longer and longer. And it created this idea that we had to come from outside of the body and almost fix it and cure it, and cut things out that were bad, right? And this has been very helpful for some things. For acute illnesses, it's been great. People don't die from acute illnesses at near the rate that they used to almost 100 years ago. But with that, first of all, we've created new problems. We've created antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria, which threaten our public health, especially in the hospital systems. You've all heard of MRSA, right? Very scary. I read an article about antibiotic-resistant chlamydia and other STDs and STIs, and so this is also very scary. Things that were treatable now are becoming more and more difficult to treat in some cases. And so on the acute side, we're seeing some problems because of the misuse and overuse of antibiotics. But even on the chronic disease side, we haven't seen the same effects that we have seen. In some cases, we really haven't seen much change in the mortality rates of chronic diseases. And so while infectious diseases, we can see in red, have gone down, non-infectious has stayed relatively the same. And if you think about it, we're also living for longer. And so we're living longer, we're kind of getting prolonged this disease process, where instead of having infectious disease for a couple weeks maybe and then passing away, now we're living for years and years and years with diseases. And so we're not dying as often, but it seems like more people are having it and for longer. And so we haven't fixed that problem of the chronic disease issue. And part of it's because we're looking at it from through the wrong lens. And that's what this whole paradigm shift is about, is addressing this problem that the antibiotic mindset has not addressed. It did great with the infectious diseases. We need a new approach for the chronic diseases. Now, along with this, as we're getting sicker as a country, as we're sicker for longer, and it's just kind of prolonging the issue, the healthcare costs are rising. There's actually a lot of factors that go into this, but as a percent of our total GDP, it's gone from about 5% to over 16%. More and more of our money is going towards healthcare. And again, this is just basically to keep us flatlined, just to keep us from not really changing much in the chronic disease state. We're paying more and more, and it keeps rising. This is another look at it, and we can see with the healthcare spending, 30% is hospitals, 10% is prescription drugs. Now, those two slices, I believe we can decrease the most just from living healthy, good diet, good lifestyle. Hospitals, in my opinion, should be emergencies. It should be if there's a trauma or an accident. Obviously, some medical emergencies come up that aren't trauma related, but most of them should be trauma. You know, if we're living healthy lives and we're managing our health over time, we won't need to go to the hospital often at all. And then prescription drugs, that should be only for the more severe cases, whether it's a disease process that has gone long, a disease process that is maybe genetic, or even like pain-related issues that for the short term, sometimes got to get out of pain so that you can sleep and heal. But if this is 40% of our rising healthcare costs, we can do a lot to decrease those costs. And then lastly, let me catch up over here. I remember to switch both of these. Okay, lastly, as part of the rising healthcare costs, the causes of bankruptcy. Actually, medical issues are number one. And this is even with, we can see at the bottom, 78% of people had health insurance at the time of their illness. But still, almost 50% of bankruptcy is caused by medical bills and medical-related conditions, even when 4 out of 5 people have health insurance. Now that is, I think, very scary. Hopefully that is changing now with the new healthcare laws. But with the high deductibles, it's hard to say whether or not that's going to be the case. But either way, none of us are safe. And so we really owe it to ourselves to empower ourselves to make healthy decisions and rely on the medical field when we really need them. But we shouldn't guarantee it and expect it. Okay. So now we talked about a lot of the financial costs of being sick. And so now I want to open up to some discussion, and this will be even the first question on the handout. What are some other costs of being sick? The money isn't the only problem with being sick. So what are some other costs of being sick? Immune deficiency. So your immune system is going to be affected, and that opens you up to other things if you're sick. Absolutely. If you're sick, you're going to be wide open for other problems that could be even worse than that one.
Downtime is not being able to do things you usually do.
Downtime. You don't get to do the things you want to do, whether it's fun, a hobby, hanging out with the family, the kids, or even going to work and missing out on work time. Absolutely, downtime. That one's okay. That's not as bad. Yeah. Bottom of the list. Gail told me to tell me that. I didn't say that one.
If I may.
Yeah.
I mean, just having an experience about a year ago, it's the quality of life. I mean, that's the big thing you miss out on. Doing the things you want to do when you want to do them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's what this gentleman talking about. That's what you miss out on. Going to work, you always can find a job. You know, but you don't have time to spend with your family because you're in bed sick.
Right.
You can't do the things you want. You can't go play around the house. go see a movie with your wife, go out to dinner with your family. It's quality of life.
Quality of life.
Right? So
If you're sick, it's
that's what
much
it costs
harder.
me.
Yeah,
That's what it cost me when it happened.
much harder to enjoy life when you're
Oh.
sick and when you're not feeling good.
Right?
And that could be an acute illness, that could just be chronic pain, that could be chronic fatigue. Anything that's lowering your quality of life makes it harder to enjoy it.
I was thinking about the stress of being sick, having to make the hard decision to rearrange your lifestyle and the way you're living. And because you're losing out on work and you
Yeah.
might have to change your housing, your family stresses, all that.
Right.
It's
Yeah. I mean, if you're really sick, it makes any life situation tougher to deal with. And it can actually even add other things, other stresses there that weren't there to begin with. And when life can be tough as it is, to add one more thing, that can be, really backbreaking. Anything else? Those are really good ones. Now those were not encapsulated in those graphs. When we're looking at number of deaths, and a lot of the health charts that you'll see in graphs, a lot of them look at sick or healthy, or alive or dead. Those types of binary looks at human life. But there's really a lot more color to it, and a lot of it is how are you living? Because if you're living to 70, but the last 20, 25 years of your life are miserable, I mean, you can't put that on a graph necessarily, but that does mean a lot, especially to the people who are going through it. And so that's another thing that we need to look at is, how important, or what do we lose when we're not feeling good? Because then when we get to what do we gain by feeling better and by being healthy, then the decisions become a lot easier to make. So take a moment to just write down what are some of the sickness costs for you that are the most important. What sort of things do you lose when you're sick? Okay. All right. So let's look at the two sides of medicine. And these are really two sides of the same coin. And so this isn't either or which is better. It's more about when are they used appropriately. Because Western medicine, conventional medicine does have its place. I hope it never goes away completely. But we also have the holistic side, which I think needs to be utilized in better ways and more often than it is by the mainstream community right now. So on the reductionist sick care, that's the conventional. The conventional model where you go in, you're sick. There's a pill for you. There's a surgical treatment for you. It's very straightforward how it's going to work, what it's going to do, and it more or less gets your body, almost forces it into that state. This is where you're going to go. We're going to get rid of the inflammation right now. That's it. We're blocking off your platelets, and they're not going to work anymore. Those are your NSAIDs. Or this tissue isn't working or something's growing that shouldn't be growing, let's cut it out, let's just get it out of there. Has its uses, but this is very physician-centered. The physician is in control. They're coming out with the treatment plan. They're the one coming out with the dosage. They're telling you how to do it. And they really, sometimes they educate, other times they don't. And I get a lot of patients where, well, the doctor just told me to take this. Well, why? They didn't tell me. They had to go. And it's really about the physician. They're the one in the driver's seat. The drugs and the surgery, again, are going to be the best treatment in this model. And there's usually nothing else you can do. In a lot of cases, and this is changing, thankfully, but still in a lot of cases, the diet and lifestyle and even supplements are shunned as, well, that's not going to help. It's only going to be a matter of time before you have to do this, or that doesn't work. And so it's really about taking away the power from the patient, unfortunately. But again, there are some situations where this is important. If you get into an accident and you have a broken bone, your say doesn't really matter as much. You need a doctor just putting that bone back together and making sure you heal properly, because there's a lot of things that could go wrong if not. And so in that case, it makes more sense. But a lot of people go and get reductionistic sick care when what they really need is holistic health care. Because while there are times where we are sick and just need to be patched up, most of the time we need to build health. And so what does that look like on the holistic healthcare side? It's very patient-centered. It's about listening to the patient, getting to know what their particular experience is. It's about educating the patient. It's about letting the patient know that they have the power and that what they do makes a big difference in their life. And so if you're going to a physician, I don't know who the physician is, but if you're going and you want to build health, that's the first thing. You need to make sure that they are patient-centered and they're listening to you and talking to you, because you're really the important one in that balance. In holistic healthcare, lifestyle and diet are the best treatments, because there are things that you're doing and you're making the decision of whether you're getting sick or healthy on a daily and even an hourly and minute basis. And the main take-home point is that your health is in your hands on the holistic side. You don't have to rely and depend on your physician. You're the one, you get to drive, you're behind the wheel. And so if you want to be healthy, you can be healthy. If you want to be sick, that's up to you too. Now again, each of these have their place. And so it's not about either or, it's about when do you use each. If you break your bone, if you have trauma, you're bleeding out, don't come to me. I'm not the right person for that. Okay. So now let's define some key terms. We talk about these a lot, but what are these how are they defined in reality? And so, first of all, health. We talk about health all the time. What is health? So the World Health Organization defines it as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And that's straight from the World Health Organization. So again, it's about total well-being. It's not just, well, I'm not sick today. Lack of sickness does not mean health. And we'll get to in a moment what else health means to you. Because if it's not just being sick, what is it? And to each of us, that may be something different, something unique that we value in health. Symptom. So we hear symptoms. It's subjective evidence that indicates the presence of a bodily disorder. And so whether it's a cough, a headache, an ache or pain, those are symptoms. Those are signs that something inside the body is awry. And in that case, is the symptom bad? It may feel bad, but it may also be like the smoke detector going off in your house if there's a fire. It's an annoying sound, especially when it's early in the morning, but if your house is on fire, you're going to be very thankful that it went off. And the symptoms are very similar to that, where that they may feel uncomfortable, but there are signs that something is off in the body, and it's an opportunity for you to address them. And we'll keep going over that. Syndrome, you probably heard of syndrome. Syndrome, very easy, just a collection of symptoms and signs that usually group together. We'll talk about metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is a collection of symptoms and signs that usually indicate someone is at a much higher risk for cardiovascular disease. It's being overweight, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol. Those are the 4 things that come together in metabolic syndrome. And they just tend to appear together, and when they do, it shows high risk for cardiovascular disease. And then now that we're on it, disease. What does disease mean? So this is the Merriam-Webster definition: an impairment of the normal state of the living animal or plant body, or one of its parts that interrupts or modifies the performance of the vital functions. So what is that trying to say in real English terms?
System isn't at ease.
Yeah, it's not at ease. It's not working well. Something's going on. It's like if a part of your car wasn't working well and it affected the performance of your car. Something is going wrong. That's basically all it can mean. Now, the good thing about disease is that it tends to be a process, and we're going to get to that next, that there's a disease process. And so if you catch it early enough, your body is self-healing. You can walk your way back through the process in most cases. The problem is when it goes on too long, then you can get irreversible damage. And that's where we start, you have to kind of manage it as best you do. But it's never too late to make positive change. Now, if we look at health, and this is going to go on the handout again. For those of you who joined us, we have handouts that are towards the back, and we'll be filling this out as we go to mainly help you connect with, how is this material, how is it important to you? Because that's really what I'm concerned about, not how it's important to me. And so for numbers 2 and 3, for number 2, we talked about the standard definition of health. What does health mean to you? How does it feel? And then for number 3, why is it important? Is it duration of life, quality of life, family, friends, things you want to do with yourself? Because the more we tap into this, the more the healthy decisions become effortless.
Is that a handout you're talking about? Is it supposed to be invited?
Yes.
Is that the tab that says handout? There you go.
Perfect. Yeah.
Talking about the first 3 questions.
And you should probably just take those out of the binding right now because we'll keep doing it. Thanks for asking. Another minute. Okay, what are a few things that we wrote for number 2? What else does health mean other than just not being an absence of disease and full body well-being? Any tangible things that you think of when you think of health?
You're happy.
Happy. Great. Feeling happy.
Energy.
Energy. Perfect. Those are two big ones right there, right? If you're happy and you have energy, it's two good things to have. You can be lacking a lot if you have those two. Good. And then what about for number 3? Why is it important to be healthy? Beyond just what your doctor says you should be healthy, or maybe your wife tells you you should be healthy. Why is it important to you to be healthy?
Live longer.
Live longer.
To, live a long, comfortable, active life.
Good. So not just long, but also feeling comfortable, being active, being able to live that life. Great. Setting example for others, right? Others who may not be healthy right now or may want to be healthy. Excellent. Those are all really good reasons. I'm sure there's more out there. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be healthy, and a lot of, and again, it's stuff that we get to own when we're healthy. We get to feel good about it. We're not just impressing someone else. Okay, so we talked about this a moment ago, so now let's get into it a little bit more. This idea of health, or we talk about disease being a process, and health is too. And that's an important thing to mention this first week, because when we were going to get to setting some goals for yourself at the end of these 6 weeks, and the idea is it's not something where you're getting to the finish line. You're not doing it all right now. You're just making some small change, because these changes will change your direction, and over time you'll be surprised how much better you can feel if you're just making concerted efforts in a different direction. And so the idea is, if you look at the top, we see someone going from health towards death. And we see a series of issues that appear. And this is a lot of times what happens in the body is we have some condition, it doesn't fully, it kind of goes away, but it may not have been cured, or at least the root cause wasn't addressed. And so the body just learned to deal with it and adapt, but it showed up in another way when it got worse again. And so here's one hypothetical example, and we'll have you look at yours, and we'll have you look by what an organ system or symptom to see how it may have changed over the years. But here we can see something like this has changed. Maybe a 2-year-old got a lot of ear infections, and then starting in the teenage years, we now have migraines, and then that led to indigestion, and then became colitis. What happened was, even though it looks like it's different symptoms, different things, the body was getting sicker. And remember, if you look at the definition of disease, something's going wrong. And so we know that at each stage something is going wrong. And even if it manifests in different ways, sometimes it's from the same core. It just built and built and built. And that's where we're unique, where cars aren't. Where that if you have something's wrong, the tires are misaligned, it's going to affect the tires and those parts immediate to the car. For us, it can morph and change a lot differently than in a mechanical structure like that. But what we see here really is this idea of you have a progression of sickness towards disease. Now, sometimes what happens, and this may happen while you're on your health journey, is something called a healing crisis. Has anyone heard of that before? Healing crisis. Okay. Healing crisis is where it feels like you want to be healthy. Maybe you start a new supplement, a new dietary regimen, you're drinking more water, and for some reason you feel worse at first. And it's confusing. Like, I thought this healthy stuff was supposed to be good for me, and now I feel worse. This wasn't part of the deal. Now, that's called a healing crisis, where you get worse at first. And because sometimes what happens is that now the body is uncovering and dealing with the stuff that it didn't have the resources to deal with before. And sometimes you end up walking back through the issues that you had as you get back to health. Had people come in, grown men come in. I haven't had acne since I was 17. What's happening? And that was just them going back through the process. One analogy of this is if, let's say, for years and years and years, you don't clean, you just kind of shove everything in the closet. You don't even want to deal with it. And now your closet is completely filled. Now, when you want to clean the closet, what's the first thing you have to do? You have to empty the closet. It's going to end up in your room or the hallway or wherever. That's your healing crisis. You have stuff all over the room. But it's your opportunity to now clean it and put it in its place or throw it out. And so while you're dealing with it, at first it gets worse before it gets better. Anyone have that experience before? I know I have. At first it becomes a real mess. But then in the long run it's better. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do for homework, again, this is all optional, but I think it would be, it could be very eye-opening. And it's going to be hard for you to read this, but basically we have, up here we have 4 different lines, and you can do 4 different, again, either systems, like digestive system or immune system, or we can even do if there's a particular symptom that has plagued you, could be headaches or something like that you may have been suffering for a while. What you do is you just mark the years along the timeline and any sort of issues that may have happened. So we have for digestive an ulcer at 8 years old, a lot of constipation, diarrhea between 12 and 16, vomiting and food poisoning between those years, a lot of instances of that, and then a lot of loose stool and nausea after eating between ages 26 and 30. And so looking at that, and if you stack them one on top of each other, you can see what was going on concurrently. And maybe you find some relationships where, my headache started around the same time that I injured my neck. Or my gut issue started around the same time that I got really sick that one time. Right? So you can start to maybe see some correlations, because really one of the main things is getting to know yourself and your health better, but also identifying the root cause, because this is one of the toughest things to do, is to see those connections. And this is one thing that, if you brought it to your physician and you knew all these things, what a home run. They'd love you for it, because this is a lot of the information that we're looking for, is to see those connections. Any questions on this, on how that works and how to utilize it? You get to pick whatever you want, but think of the things that really have affected you or do affect you the most, and just put them along the timeline. There's no rhyme or reason. We give you 4 lines so that you can separate it, and so it doesn't get too clogged on one line. But it's really part of the self-exploration process, so I encourage you to take advantage of that. Okay. So again, it's a process. And the important thing to know is to be patient, because it takes time. It takes time to get sick. It also takes time to get healthy. If something happens in your life where you hit rock bottom, health-wise, it took a while to get there. And so be patient that it takes time to get back. And that's a good thing. It could be a bad thing too. It could, if you're impatient, you may want to just be back to health immediately. But then on the other side, you don't have to feel pressure to do everything all at once. And that's what we're really going to build upon these next few weeks, is that it's small change over time. It's very easy to do. You'll barely notice it. And it has lasting and profound effects. And that's really what we're looking for. At least I'm not looking for anyone to completely revolutionize and be a different person at 5 or 6 weeks. I'm looking for people to have some different habits that give them a different direction. And so that way they'll get to somewhere else in the future. That's really the main thing. And so I don't want people to feel a lot of pressure that they have to be immediately healthy, because that's not at all what health is. Health is a process, it's not a destination. Now, to actually build and maintain health, there's no drug, there's no surgery that can get you there. They can get rid of sickness, they can get rid of disease, yes, but they cannot build health. Building health has to come from what goes on inside your body, especially the food and the lifestyle that you engage in. Those are the things that build health. And so regardless of what your disease process is and where you are along that timeline, it's always beneficial to build health through diet and lifestyle. And that's why these 6 weeks are going to focus on that, because we can all benefit from it. We can all do a better job. It's always about maintaining balance. And we can always, even if we're doing a great job, we can probably also make it more fun and simpler. It doesn't always have to be a chore, too. And so we're going to work on all of that. Now, one of the biggest pieces of not only removing disease but building health is to remove the cause. Now, a lot of times, diet and lifestyle is the cause. Some common conditions are caused by poor eating habits, right? So you remove the cause by changing the diet. But other times, there can be a lot of causes. And that is probably the most difficult part about getting healthy, is knowing what is the actual cause. A lot of times, that's where you really need a physician to help do that detective work for you. But bottom line, you can always help yourself and build health with diet and lifestyle. Here's some root causes of diseases. Okay, so now root causes of diseases, yeah, we talked about that. There could be a lot of things. It could be an infection. It could be something, people that have, let's say, asthma. It could be maybe they're allergic to something in the air. There could be all sorts of causes. We're going to focus mainly on things that we do that we know may be building health or may be bringing us away from health. So now I encourage you to take a few minutes to go through start with 4 through 6. And so just a basic level of commitment. And then what are some things that you do that you think are self-destructive, that remove health? And then what are some things that you do that really support your health? Only 30 seconds to a minute. Okay, anyone care to volunteer any self-destructive health activities, whether past or present? Yes.
I don't always get enough rest.
Enough rest. I think that's going to be a common one in this room. Yep, not getting enough rest.
Stress eating,
Stress eating.
and exercising,
Not exercising enough.
Work too many hours.
Work too many hours.
missing meals or either ones.
So inconsistent eating schedule, either missing meals or what was the other one? Missing meals or just
Missing meals or, I don't know, it's just type of meal, missing meals,
Junk food.
yeah.
junk food.
Selection of food.
Poor selection, yeah.
over, for a long.
Okay, yeah, just perfect. Awesome. Yeah, those are common ones. Those are the ones right there. What about healthy habits? What are things that we do that is good for our health? This may be different for each person. Oh, portion control. Great. So eating in inadequate portions. That's a great habit to have.
Substitute water with soda or
Putting water in instead of soda. Perfect. Yeah, that's a big one right there, actually.
I like eating outdoors a lot, activities.
Okay, excellent. So exercise with hobbies. Hiking, camping, things that are outdoors, involve moving the body. Great. Anyone get a lot of rest? Yeah. What is that, right? Yeah. We have a whole lecture on it next week, so it's coming soon. Good. So as you can see, we all have strengths. We all have areas for improvement. Some of ours overlap, where actually some people seem to be doing well at things others want help with. So we're all friends here, so we could have conversations on how to leverage those. But also just keep in mind that you do have things that you're doing that is helping you build health. And so appreciate those, celebrate in those, and then just work on those areas of improvement, and your health, you'll see your health improve over time. So let's talk, since we've done that, let's talk about the foundations of a healthy lifestyle. And we touched upon all of this. Most of it, actually. We didn't really talk about the last one. Okay. So foundations of a healthy lifestyle. These are 4 things that we need to be healthy, and we're going to talk about these each week. So number 1, rest. And that has to do, we're going to talk not only about sleep, but also stress reduction. Because sleep can be restful or not. And if you're really wound up and stressed, you're not going to get good sleep. So they really go hand in hand. Nutrition. So what are you putting into your body, whether food or water or other liquids? What's going into your body? That's your fuel. The 3rd one, which is going to be in week 4, exercise. Moving your body. In what ways is it helping you? Is it hurting you? In general, exercise is good, but obviously anything could be bad. And so we're going to discuss what are good exercises, what are some exercises to focus on, especially if you're in pain. If you're in pain, exercise is one of the toughest things to do. And so how do you exercise without causing more pain? How do you do it to actually decrease pain? And then lastly, and we save this to the last to keep you here for as long as possible, but the mental frame. So the mind-body connection, emotions, and mental state. Something that is much more likely to come up voluntarily in the women's empowerment section than the men's empowerment, but it is very important. And we're going to go into things like emotional intelligence and our use of our mental faculties and emotional faculties, and actually how that affects our aging and oxidative stress, which is one of the important factors in aging. And so all of these things are important for a healthy lifestyle. And even though nobody specifically mentioned mental frame, we did talk about, one of the things about being healthy was happy. And so it is something that we do think about, whether or not we're consciously aware of it as much as females are. And so we're going to talk about each one of these. These are very important. We're going to go through them in order, week by week. That way we can spend time on it. And the idea is we're going to give you specific things that you can focus on for that week. So you can give that, each week you can give your attention to one of these lifestyle habits. And now to hopefully seal the deal on why lifestyle is important. And this is something I tell all my patients, why it's important for them to engage in lifestyle habits or to stick to certain plans that we set up. And the main thing is because there's 160 hours in the week. and you're gonna, if you're in your doctor's office every week, maybe you're there for an hour. That's 1 hour a week. There's 167 more. What are you doing during those hours? And so, really, the bulk of the time is yours, and you're deciding which direction you're going. And if it's 167 hours of going backwards, there isn't so much people can do to bring you back to where you were before that. It's just going to be a steady downhill slide. And so, but if it's 167 hours of making small steps forward towards health, it's amazing how far you can go and surprise yourself, even if you're not expecting to improve that much. Big changes can happen. And it's really about the consistency. It doesn't have to be much, but the consistency is really the most important. And so really what we want to ask yourself is, are your choices bringing you closer to or farther away from health? If it's closer to health, you're moving farther away from your doctor. Less visits, less drugs, less surgery, less supplements, less money that you're spending. You're doing it on your own. Okay. Anyone want to share anything on that? This idea of lifestyle and diet and just, yeah.
Being healthy is a very tangible thing. When I was much younger, I thought I was healthy. I got sick at 59 years old, and at 60 years old, I feel better than I did when I was 30. So it's very tangible. I used to think I was healthy, but I feel way better. And I might not be in physical shape like I was when I was 30, but I feel better every day. I have more energy than I had when I was younger. I walk every day. I mean, exercise doesn't mean you have to push, right?
Right.
That's what I've learned. And that's what I used to be a gym rat. I don't go to the gym anymore. I stretch, I ride a bike, I go for walks, I play golf. It's not what it's all been, what you've been brainwashed your whole life. The definition of exercise is not what you think it is. To feel better, to feel healthy. The diet is a serious piece. I've learned that too. I wouldn't recommend giving up all your vices at once. It's a pretty hard thing to do. Like every vice you could possibly think of, cold turkey, including smoking cigarettes, gluten-free, sugar-free. I mean, you name it, I did it. Right? You're my witness right there. That's not my doctor. That's my coach. I call him coach. So
Yeah, I like that.
it's doable.
Yeah,
It's doable.
and you saw the effects too.
Oh, for sure.
And it was,
For sure. I'm literally back from the dead. That's what I learned in recent doctors. You know, as I think back what I went through, I lost 7 or 8 hours. I cannot remember because that's because of the problem. That'll set things, straight. Give you some priorities, which is really important. So
yeah.
this is pretty important. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, and you're better, you feel better now than you did 30 years ago.
For sure.
I mean,
I
that
still
says,
get tired and I still work too much and I do all the stupid things that you get trapped in. That's what I call it, you're trapped. And it's up to you to take the trap off because you're the only one that can control it. If you think you're going to get in trouble at work and you don't spend any hours, it's not true. You think you need to do that. It's not a necessity. Because if you thought it was, then your company wouldn't be doing this.
yeah, that is true.
That's something to think about. I get trapped in it all the time. I mean, I have jobs that I run. I'm responsible for a lot of people I run the company. So I think I have to be there all the time. Sometimes 7 days a week. Well, the company runs without me. I work. They ran when I was, dying in the hospital. They ran. They didn't shut the doors.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't have to be there every Saturday. Someone told me that. I'm not.
Yeah.
But I get trapped and I'll go 2 or 3 Saturdays in a row and I go, am I stupid? I'm not going to work next Saturday, go to Saturday after that.
You know, and it
It's all up to you.
happens.
It's a choice. It's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice, and that's the good news is that we all have the decision and the power. Sometimes things come up where it becomes more and more difficult, and that's the reality of the scenario. But the good news is we have more decisions, we have more choices, and we can get ourselves out of it.
Like
And
that.
life happens sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Remember, health and disease are a process. It's not one thing. And so maybe life happens and you feel yourself start to slip a little bit. Well, you'll have tools to get yourself back in the right direction. And that's really what this is all about. It's not about perfection. It's about what are you doing as a whole. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so now we have the wheel of health. Health is more than just physical health. Now, we're going to touch on a few of these, not all of these, but again, this is more for you to see where is your life thriving and maybe where are some things that are holding your life back. And some of these, like money and finances, this is beyond the scope of my training, and so you want to get like a CPA or a financial consultant to help you with that, but they do play a role in your overall health. So go ahead and take a few minutes to start to color these in, and then we'll see kind of what we come up with because we're doing really good on time, actually. See if you discover anything about areas of your life that maybe you were neglecting that you didn't think of before. So one thing that this helps illustrate, this wheel of health, it's sometimes called a pie of health, is that health isn't just one definable thing. And it's not in a lot of times, I think it's the Western or American way of bigger, stronger, faster, more, always pushing the limits. And that's not the way health is in the Eastern mindset. In the Eastern mindset, it's about balance. And you're always looking to find that balance. Balance is not a perfection. It's not something that you arrive at and stay at. It's something that you're always balancing where you're at in that moment. And so things can change where sometimes, we talked about life happens. Sometimes family and friends, something may come up where that demands more of your time, may take away from other pies of your health, other wheels, aspects of your health. And so in that case, we make concessions because sometimes it's just the right thing to do, or at least it feels that way. But the idea is the more we can reflect upon it, the more we can then reach for balance in the long run. Now, did anyone discover anything in this, doing this exercise, something that maybe they hadn't really thought about recently? Tell you mine, when I did it, I realized that I had been neglecting fun and recreation, and it wasn't as much as it used to be. And so that kind of was an eye-opener to me, thinking, boy, how can I really, first of all, what am I working so hard for if I'm not enjoying it? And B, how can I really be healthy if I'm not, getting the most out of life and taking part in the things that I enjoy? So that was my thing, was that I was neglecting that part of my life, the fun and recreation. It's too much work.
I was kind of surprised that I feel like I'm a little more balanced than I thought I was.
Good.
But except for the health and fitness part, that's probably
Okay.
that surprised me.
So that's a good thing, right? It's like,
I
okay,
don't know if it's good or not.
it could be. So it could go either way. It could be a good thing that at least you feel like I'm not as far gone as I thought I was, and so I'm, it may feel more motivation to keep up the good work. Or in my dad's case, he would actually be upset when the doctors didn't tell him he was almost dying because he thought I need to be scared straight. Somebody tell me, and so I guess it could go either way. It depends on what motivates you.
Well, there's a guy that I kind of like and look up to. He always tells me, he's like, if you're not busy living, you're dying. So,
Mhm.
and I've been putting a lot of effort in the last year and a half to family, friends, personal life.
Yeah.
A lot more so than I did the 10, 15 years before that, which I was completely outside of it.
Right. Yeah.
Me time.
Yeah.
Me time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you're right. If you're not busy living, you're busy dying, and that's really. I think a lot of us probably have at one point in our lives been really focused on work to the point where it took away from other elements of our lives that maybe would have given us more joy, more overall health. And so that's really one of the main things about this, is that even though we're going to focus on the health and fitness aspect, we're going to do some personal growth, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about physical environment, but most of this wheel we're not going to really touch upon, but it does play a role. And so whether if there's an aspect that you need that you're not going to get here, there's something out there for you. There's a professional out there who can help you, or group or something. But the first thing is awareness and just knowing where our overall health is there and where it might be lacking. Okay. Now we talked about this. So health is a process. And there's one other thing I wanted to say about that, I think. Okay, it's a process to get there. Healthy habits, difficult to form, they're difficult to start. But once you start them, very easy to continue. It's just about keeping the momentum. And so that's why sometimes it's easier to build slowly. But to keep that, keep the momentum, because once you start, you don't want to have it stop and then have to start again. That's just giving yourself more work. But also being patient with the process and knowing that even if it seems miserable right now, it won't be miserable forever. At least it's not supposed to be. If it is, you're doing it wrong. But it shouldn't be miserable forever. There are certain things that were probably really difficult for you to start, but once you got used to it, you probably didn't think about it anymore. How difficult was anyone remember tying their shoes for the first time, or learning how to tie their shoes, and how fumbly that was, or anyone who wears contacts, putting in that first contact? But now, these things we do without even thinking. And it's the same thing with our lifestyle habits. There's things that we can develop that once we start doing them, it's just like tying our shoes. It's something that we don't even give a second thought to, but while we're doing it, we're getting healthier. And so be patient with that process, because it can be uncomfortable. Healing crisis, we talked about that. You might feel better before you feel worse, but knowing what, it's like the difference between good pain and bad pain. Better before worse. You might feel worse before you feel better. We don't want you to, not the other way. Now, obviously, there are some, it's like the difference between a good pain and a bad pain. Not all pain is good for you. Some pain is actually can be really destructive, But if you're like in the gym and you're feeling that nice sore feeling, that pump feeling, that could be a good thing, right? So there's a difference. And so some things, just because you're feeling bad, doesn't mean, oh, this is just a healing crisis. This has to be good. No, be in touch with your body, have a good rapport of what's happening, and just be aware of it. If you start to feel really bad, step off a little bit and just be gentle. We don't want any serious things happening, but I don't expect that. Now we're going to have to keep track of your progress. It's been shown that the more you document, the better you are at something. The more, if you want to achieve a goal or you want to improve at anything, if you document it, you will have much better outcomes than if you don't. Otherwise, it's just in your head and you're not even really sure what you're working with. And so we're going to have to keep track of your progress and towards your goal. But also when we do certain lifestyle, okay, for this week I'm gonna work on getting 8 hours of sleep. We'll have you document that each week. It doesn't have to be much, but it's actually gonna talk to Gail about getting you those POW books. But whatever you use, I use a little notebook that I use to document my stuff, and it was a pain in the butt at first, but now I don't even think about it. But the idea is, yeah, you really want to keep track of it, because if you're doing well, you want to know you're doing well. If you're not doing well, you want to see where you're at. And it's not for a judgment or for a success-failure type thing. It's just for continual information so that you can keep improving. And so, at the beginning of each day, we'll just talk about how did you do this past week. And you can use that tracking of just whatever you wrote down during the week to let us know, how was this week health-wise, and where did you do well, and what are some areas that you want to continue to improve with. The more you focus on that, the more you'll improve, and you'll be surprised where you're at. And then lastly, celebrate your successes. If it's always a chore, if it's always pressure, if it's always stress, first of all, that's not health. That's not even beginning with health. And secondly, it's not going to enforce good habits. It's not going to make you want to be healthy if it's a stressful, shameful, bad experience. And so celebrate your successes, no matter how small they are. Any small step towards health is a step towards health. Now, along that, take a moment to, if health is a process and it's a journey, what are some potential obstacles that could be standing in your way of that journey? Yeah, like an injury. Well, actually, so hold that thought, because we'll get to that. First, let's set we're going to have you think about a goal, and then it'll be in terms of the goal, what obstacles might get in your way. And so, again, if it's pretty well established that if you want to accomplish something, setting a goal is the best way to start that process. And so, what I encourage you to do is set a SMART goal. I'm sure we all know what SMART goals are, but just for the recording, I'll say them. Specific. It's got to be. You can't just say I want to feel better. It's got to be. You want to be as specific as you can. Measurable. Can you actually define and measure it when it happens? Basically, when do you know you've reached that? Achievable. You're not going to be flying around in space. There's certain things that just aren't going to happen. If you're 200 pounds, you're not going to lose 190. So let's think about what's achievable, especially in 6 weeks. Relevant. Think about something that's important to you, especially important to your health. And then timely. We have really 5 weeks, because week 6 we'll be discussing it. So in 5 weeks, what is something that is manageable? Like, for example, if it were weight, you don't want to pick anything more than, I would say no more than 2 pounds a week. 2 pounds a week, 2 to 3 pounds is sustainable and healthy. More than that, and it's hit or miss. And now you can pick certain things that are like weight related. If it's like blood cholesterol, if you're going to get measured in a few weeks, okay? But otherwise, you can pick certain habits or certain things that you want to do in that time, okay? But something that you want to, what change do you want to make in these next 5 weeks? Really open to you. So I'll give you a few minutes to think about it now. And maybe we can share a couple if anyone wants to share, and that may give some people ideas. Yeah.
I want to dedicate 1 hour a day to exercise.
1 hour a day to
I
exercise.
try to do that since New Year's, so I'm not there yet. I did 3 to 4 days a week. And I think it's changed because it should be, the hard part about my lifestyle is being the me time or the discipline arranged with my family.
Okay.
It's really hard to get time to
Yeah.
dedicate.
Now, is it realistic to ask yourself to do that every day, or could you give yourself?
Maybe just 1 hour a day. I mean, I can get up before everybody, or, sometimes I'm working around the house till midnight or 1 o'clock, and everybody's been in bed for 3 hours, so why can't I exercise instead of, tinkering, trying to finish the kind of stuff that I should have done earlier. Like last night, I should have dropped that and exercised, but it was something that had to be done.
Okay, so the time is there,
Yeah.
and it's more about allocating it
And
towards.
disciplining myself. I think it's probably discipline, self-discipline.
Maybe we should start
It
with 1
confuses
minute.
self-discipline with coordinating,
I think a lot of times you think about it too much,
Yeah.
I know, what time should I go instead of just doing it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's 1 hour, and you can plan it, then you got so many hours, instead of just thinking about it, you just say, I'm gonna take this 1 hour out of the day.
Yeah.
And you go, boom. And
Yeah.
you rest, and you can continue with doing what you're doing.
Do you take lunch every day?
No.
I used to not take lunch because I was telling them.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. My work time here is crazy. It's really what
I
it's
never
hard. As far as discipline.
thought I would exercise every day. I never thought I would do it every day. I don't do it every day, but I'll tell you what I do. I never took lunch ever. I mean, I would eat at my desk at my computer, but not actually leave the building, go have lunch, go for a walk, do whatever you want.
I don't really like anything physical. I mean, it could be a hobby, it could be out in the garden, team outdoor or something. I don't want to minimize myself.
I mean, I tell you how it started. Lifting weights is okay, just lightly. But I would take off at lunchtime.
It's a weight.
Right.
Before I would take off at lunchtime and I would walk 10 minutes in one direction. And then I would turn around. 20 minutes. You do that a couple of times a day. You could find time to do that, trust me.
Yeah. For some people, it is the smaller bursts.
Smaller burst.
Yeah.
An hour might be too much to
Yeah.
start with.
You walk 15 minutes one direction in the morning and then back, and then do that at night when you get home.
And the amazing part is, that 10 minutes, you go further and further and further every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Because you almost start to, in your mind, test yourself.
Now, those are some good things you brought up because those are potential obstacles. And it's good to know those obstacles because we all face them. And ignoring them doesn't help. But knowing them and then coming up with ways to traverse them, which we've been discussing right now, now we start to get solutions that actually make sense for our lives. Because there's a lot of times where sometimes we overthink, sometimes we have put pressure on ourselves, sometimes we try to force something that just isn't quite working for us. And it's really about finding the thing that does work. And so, I also encourage you to, and that's the last question there, and we'll keep moving, but you can do this on your own time if you haven't already, but writing down what are some potential obstacles for your overall health, but also for this goal that you want, this thing that you want to accomplish. What could get in your way of accomplishing it? Because the more we bring this to light, the less big, bad, scary, and unknown it is, and the more we can deal with it and handle it. And here is our the chart, and this is behind the wheel of health. And so at the top, you're going to, that's where you put your SMART health goal. And then as you can see, each week we have, we're going to have you pick another kind of small thing that you want to do to get you closer to that goal. And so we'll break it up into smaller segments, and then how's it going to get you closer to that goal, and what did you do that week? And again, this is more to just track, more to just give you some some perspective. Sometimes on the journey of health, we lose track of where we were, and where we're going. And sometimes it's hard to see, what kind of change we've made in our lives, even in a short time. And so this kind of helps us see that process unfold. And then the other thing I do want you to consider, and this is important, but I didn't put it on the sheet, is what can you do to celebrate when you do succeed? Because it should be something that you celebrate your success. That may get in the way of your goal. Sometimes that's the challenge. Sometimes the way we reward ourselves is part of the problem. And so, yeah, work hard, play hard, right? So maybe that is one of the obstacles, is no reward system that's healthy. And so maybe that's something to come up with. Yeah, but that is important because, health should be fun. It should be something that compels us and that we're drawn towards. Not something that we're dreading and that we're just doing because we have to. Okay, so now let's go through what the next to this men's empowerment is going to be like. We set the foundation today. We talked about basic health and wellness and the role it plays in your livelihood, and the way we're kind of split, the paradigm is split between mainstream medicine and holistic medicine. And we've set the foundation that lifestyle and diet are the biggest factor in your long-term health. And so from here, we're going to build upon that. And so next week, workshop 2, as you see, these are each Wednesdays from 4:30 to 6, same time, same place. And we're just going to do it every week until we're through it. So next week, we're going to talk about heart disease, major killers of men and women, and the role of stress in heart disease, and how rest, what does rest mean, what's adequate rest, how to get good rest if you're not getting it, and also how to reduce stress if you have a lot of it, which, let's face it, we all face stress from time to time. And so it's really like garbage. You're always going to get garbage. What do you do with it? You got to throw it out. You got to put it somewhere. Workshop week 3, we're going to talk about diabetes, obesity, and nutrition. The role of those 3. These actually, diabetes and obesity and heart disease, go together very strongly correlated. And even if it's not obesity or even diabetes, nutrition plays a major role in a lot of diseases, so it's going to tie together with each week. Now, week number 4, we're going to talk about pain, talk about the role of inflammation in pain specifically, the 2 types of inflammation. One of them's great for you, the other one's bad for you. And then exercise, and how exercise can help you with pain, how it can help with a whole bunch of bodily issues, but also how to, again, exercise if you are in pain, and so that you don't cause more. Number 5, week 5, we're going to talk about aging, which is a process, that's a disease process that none of us can escape. Well, we're all going to be aging. So aging, its effect on the brain and neurological system, on the male system and men's health, and also what is the mind-body connection between it all. And it's pretty fascinating. And then week 6, we're going to bring it all together, and we're going to talk about basically where we've come in this time, what you've learned, what you've gotten out of it, but then more importantly, where do you go from there? We're not going to just leave you hanging on week 6. We're going to come up with, help you set up a plan for, what do you do to keep you going through this process? Do you need to get screening tests? Do you want to start seeing a specific professional if you have a condition that maybe, maybe you want to start seeing a chiropractor, maybe you want to start seeing an acupuncturist for whatever your issues are. Setting, and then what type of practitioner, what are their mindsets, their personalities. Really setting that up so that moving forward, you can have some more action steps waiting for you. And so the momentum keeps up, and whatever momentum we do build over these next 5 weeks doesn't come to a screeching halt, because then you have to start all over again. Okay, one thing I want you to think about for that goal that you have, if you haven't set it yet, hopefully you set it tonight. Think about the one action step that you can take. What is the first thing that you can do, and that you can do within the next 24 hours to get you closer to that goal? Because then that one clear step could be the difference, because it's the first movement and you're getting that ball rolling. So think about, what is that first action step that will get you closer? Any questions about, okay, so we already talked about these, at least the disease timeline. I encourage you to fill this out, 30 to 45 minutes max if you're being thorough and looking at your health history, but it could be very enlightening. And then the POW Diet Diary, did you get those yet? Did you get a POW Diet Wellness Diary? I'll see if Gail has any. And I encourage you, it's just basically just a way to track diet, obviously, but also energy, mood, a whole bunch of measurables. But even if you just do it in a notebook, I encourage you to take, here are just a few examples: water intake, bowel movements, and energy. Basically, just get in the habit of keeping track of something, but it's up to you what you want to keep track of. But I really encourage you to take track of at least one thing. I picked those because those are pretty good indicators of overall wellness. How much water you're drinking, how often are you going to the bathroom, and what's your overall energy. And if you track that throughout this process, we'd like to see a change in the positive direction. Okay, that is it. Thank you so much for being here and participating. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a very healthy week. Are there any other questions before we go on? Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.